Thus ends the depressing part of the speech. I think we've got to understand there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that gets us there. And there's no one way to run a school or a classroom. So I think we've got to ask ourselves hard questions. What do we need and what do we value? First thing is have a vision. Now you guys, again, independent school audience, this is a really unique thing for me. How many of you, and I know the answer to this, all of your schools have mission statements, right? August, chiseled in stone somewhere, handed down, on the mountain. How many of you have read your mission statement in the last 6 months? Awesome. Again, completely different answer than I get in most of the times I get to talk about this. Next question. How many of you feel that everything that you do in your schools pulls towards that mission? Went from about 90% to about 10%. Right? Really interesting. Schools have these beautiful, wonderful mission statements. And again, independent schools have gorgeous mission statements. And if that is our mission, shouldn't that drive everything we do? So, SLA has 5 core values. Inquiry, what are the questions we can ask? Research, how can we find answers to those questions? Collaboration, how can we make those answers deeper, better, richer by working together? Presentation, how do we show what we know? And reflection, how do we step back from that and ask ourselves what we have learned and how we have learned? With every single unit plan that our teachers write, in the learning plan of the unit plan, they have to write what is the inquiry the kids will do, how will they research it, how will they collaborate. They have to integrate it into everything they do. We had some visitors at SLA last week, and they came to me at the end of the day. I like to do a debrief with people who come and visit. And I said, well, what'd you see? And she said, oh my God, inquiry is everything in this school. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, we sat in one of your Algebra 2 classes, and the teacher was frustrated that the kids weren't doing as much homework in that class as they wanted. So he posted up all of this data on on grades and homeworks and percentages and da-da-da-da-da. And then he said, what conclusions do you draw from looking at this? And I said, yeah. She goes, most teachers would have just yelled at the kids, which I thought was funny. But this has to be the walk we walk, everything we do. Gates Foundation, they've got their mission statement, right? This is back when they were doing the small schools movement. Rigor, relevance, and relationships. By the way, that is, I don't know, people saw we had Bill Gates came to our school last year, which is weird. I'm going to tell a quick story just because it's a fun one to teach and what happens when, and it's important because it's what happens when you empower kids. So Gates, he gave a whole speech in front of a bunch of kids, but before that, he came up and toured our engineering labs. And our whole engineering program at SLA is built on green engineering and very grassrootsy in its kind of ethos. All kinds of trying to build things that people can use. So we've built a flow process biodiesel generator. We've built most windmills, the windmills turn this way. Well, in a city, that's not particularly useful because you rarely get straight winds. So we built a vertical windmills that could take swirling winds. All these kind of amazingly cool projects. High school kids. Now Gates has spent $22 billion trying to solve the world's energy problems. And apparently he thought we maybe had something to tell him. Because with every, and this is the interesting thing about Gates. He is exactly who you think he is. He is brilliant on a level that I was blown away by. As we walked him around to each of the projects, he knew the flaw in all of our designs. And made sure to point them out to the kids, which was So, with the biodiesel thing, we literally have patent pending on that one. He walked up to the kids and said, wow, that's interesting. How'd you solve the glycerin waste problem? And we were like, well, we haven't completely solved that yet, but how did he know? So he walks over to one of the projects, and this is one of the projects I really love that we did, and that is the kids, solar energy, cool thing. Let's assume you've got like a space this size. Traditionally, what you do is you lay down panels over whatever the size of the space is, and that's how you collect the energy. It's expensive because solar panels are expensive, and it also is incredibly expensive as solar technology gets better. You've got to replace all the cells. There's a cheaper way to do it, which we figured out. Parabolic mirror, cells in the middle. fewer cells, it captures, they said, I think something like 90% of the same amount of energy that that space would have done. Now when you have to replace it, all you gotta do is pop out the cells in the middle, replace. Cheaper, more efficient. Well, not more efficient as in the whole thing, but cheaper. They took the next step. They said, all right, parabolic mirrors, to get a parabolic mirror is still really expensive. And that's not gonna work for most, for low-income folks. Plaster cast of a parabolic mirror, smash mirrors, mosaic. 87% as efficient as the pure parabolic mirror in all their tests. So Frida Anderson, she was a junior at the time, she's a senior now, is explaining this whole concept to Gates. And Gates, if you used a laser to lay in the shards of the mirror, you could get an even higher rate of efficiency. Frida, yes, Mr. Gates, that's true, but the point is to try and keep this as low cost as possible, and getting access to lasers, that's very expensive, Yeah, but if you used a laser, that would, and Gates just says the exact same thing, if you used a laser, get you higher, and Frida Anderson looks at him and goes, yeah, but not everybody has access to a laser, do they? Whoa! And there I am going, Mr. Gates, the next project, okay, over this way. I tell that story, one, because it's funny, but two, because when, again, presentation, when you have the courage of your convictions, when you've been taught that your ideas matter, when you have been empowered to believe that what you do matters in the world, and that to present those ideas with agency and authority, you can speak truth to power. So, she thought I was mad at her. Because after she's like, I'm so sorry, and I was like, that was the most cool thing ever. Visions. How many people know about the Coalition of Essential Schools? Amazing organization that, in my opinion, should have won and didn't. And these are the habits of mind that form the backbone of every coalition school. You're walking into a different school when that is your mission. And then this one is just high-tech high, personalization, adult world connection, common intellectual mission, and this one's just fun. This is Christian Long. He's a school designer, but for a long time he was an English teacher. And last year he taught actually in a small independent school in Fort Worth. And this was on the door of his 10th grade, of his classroom. He taught 10th grade English. You are walking into a different experience when that is on the door of your class every day. And he worked very, very hard to make sure that that vision was realized in his classroom every day. What would your learning manifesto be? What would you say your school is about? At the end of the day, this is what I want for SLA kids, and it's where I think the core values takes us. I want kids to be thoughtful, wise, passionate, and kind. If they're that. And when I say thoughtful, I don't mean that as a synonym for kind. I mean literally full of thought. If they are full of thought, if they have the wisdom to apply those thoughts to the things that they are passionate about, and they are kind, I think we did our job. I think they'll be fine. So how do we get there? The first thing, and again, this is something, again, that SLA stole a little bit from independent schools. I think that we have to create caring institutions. How many people are high school teachers in the room? Keep your hands up. What do you teach?
Physics.
What do you teach?
History.
What do you teach?
Engineering.
What do you teach?
Robotics.
You all forgot the most important thing.
Kids.
You all teach kids. So if you take nothing else, and I really, really, really mean this, this is like my revolutionary idea. If you take nothing else from the time we spend together, please change your language. The difference between the statement, I teach physics, and I teach kids physics, is the ballgame. That's where we win. And again, I don't think it's semantics. The thing that scares me most of all about what I see in my own child's education is that elementary school teachers, who historically have gotten that, are forgetting that. The only way you ask a kindergarten kid to read 560 books in a year is to think that you are teaching reading, not Jacob. So, if nothing else, understand that difference, that we teach kids before we teach subjects. I also think that inquiry is it. I think that we learn this way. We learn when we have a question we want answered, and then we seek it out. And yet, in so many classrooms across this country, we think to ourselves, well, I've got all this information, and it's my job to impart it to children. And they will get it or not. And we never think to ask, hey, what do you want to know? And how can you find it? I also think we need to understand that schools truly have to be about student-centered learning. It's not about us. This is fine because I'm only here for a couple hours and, whatever. But even this only matters if what you take from it is individualized to you, if matters to you, if allows you to change your practice. Otherwise, it's just some guy giving a speech. And big deal. Which is why after the break, I'm going to work more to make it about that. That being said, I also still think that teachers play an incredible role. And I think those folks who think that we can outsource education, who think that, and this is going on in the Philadelphia schools, principals are putting kids on study island for 3 and 4 hours a day to prep them for the PSSAs, removing teachers almost completely from the equation. Those folks who think that we can teacher-proof education could not be more wrong. All of us in the room, and of this I don't even have to ask you to raise your hands because I know it's true. All of us in the room have had that moment in our careers where we knew we were the most important adult in a child's life in that moment in time. That is always what we do. And to think that kids don't need mentors is to get to that very heart of the reductive nature of training, not education. Making sense of the world with your community and with adults who care is what schools do. We need to remember that. I also think we need to understand that schools are community-based. We can learn from many. One of the things that amazes me is how many English teachers do we have in the room? Folks who teach kids English. There, use my own language. Do you read any works of a living author in your classrooms? Yes? No? Do you try and contact that author? Why not? Bring them in. And, and the beautiful thing is, well, they live somewhere else. Skype them in. We can learn from many. So our kids, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago now, they were doing this amazing project in an 11th grade English class. We call it the Change the World Project, where they look up issues that are important to them, seek them out, find out things that they can do, really cool project. So in Dallas a couple of years ago, the deputy mayor of Dallas launched this huge campaign, I swear to God, called the Pull Your Pants Up campaign. I'm not kidding. This really happened. You can look it up.